Hi all. In this session, we are going to know about the important disease of cultured oyster. Mainly three oyster diseases we are discussing on this session. And the oysters, I think all of you know oysters. They are the families of Osteridae or Aviculidae, the true oysters and pale oysters, and found in the warm water areas of or the temperate areas of the ocean. And the true oysters have been cultivated as food for more than 2000 years. The Europeans they are started in the culture of oyster. And the oysters occur along the estuaries, backwaters, bays, and the ocean of the Indian coastal water. They are mainly used as a subsistence fisheries, that is mainly for the personal consumption and the local marketing and all. The meat is consumed locally, and of late there is growing demand for it some part of the country, and now it is demand for the export. And the shell is used in lime-based industries and also used for making some shell are used as a showcase items. At the present, oyster culture is not much practiced in the country except for the experimental culture. Then we are going for the major part of the video. The bonamiosis is one of the disease. We are mainly going for three major diseases: bonamiosis, then martiliosis, and microcystosis. These are the three major parasitic diseases found in oyster. The bonamiosis or hemocell disease, that's the first one in this slide. Bonamia ostrea is the protozoan parasite that causes the bonamiosis or hemocell disease in oysters. They are mainly affected in the Ostrea edulis. This is the major host of the bonamiosis is Ostrea edulis, and also affected in all bivalves. But the major host it is Ostrea edulis, and it is affected in the part of the granular blood cells or hemocytes of the flat oyster. It is mainly affected in the hemocytes, so it is called as the hemocell disease. And the bonamiosis can be lethal to Ostrea edulis, especially if the oyster is stressed. In the stressed condition of the oyster, the parasite easily attached, and the environment, bad environmental condition, the environmental parameters changes, that also easily attached the parasite to the host. Then clinical signs, which can take up to 5 months after exposure to appear. That is one of the character in bonamiosis. We cannot directly identify bonamiosis of this parasite. Why? Because the clinical signs appear after 5 months. So within that 5 months, we can identify any other clinical signs. So that is a drawback in the cultured area of the oyster. That may consist of yellow discoloration and lesion occur in the connective tissues of gills, then mantle and digestive gland. This is another clinical sign of bonamiosis. May consist of yellow discoloration and lesion occur in the connective tissue of the gill, mantle and digestive gland. Then infection may result in high mortality if the parasite attached to the host The most of the bonamiosis shows high mortality of oyster, especially when the environmental condition change or during the period of stress such as spawning. In the period of spawning, and if any environmental pattern is changed, that is also expose the number of pathogen and that easily enter to the body of the oyster. And the transmission of this parasite occur horizontally, that is from oyster to the oyster it is happening. That there is no known treatment for bonamiosis, and therefore only effective measures to prevent the introduction of the disease. There is no treatment for the bonamiosis, so we can only prevent the disease, prevent the entry of pathogen, and remove or discard any host affected with the pathogen. And some infected areas have had success in the management of Bonamia ostrea by leaving highly infected areas fallow and reducing the stocking density. This is also one of the preventive measures. We have to reduce the stocking density and avoid the area that will affected with the parasite. The next disease is martiliosis or digestive gland disease. Martiliosis is one of the another parasitic disease. It's a protozoan parasite that known as Martilia refrigen. Martilia refrigen is a parasitic protozoan that cause martiliosis or digestive gland disease in oyster. And the major oyster affected with the Martilia, it is Ostrea edulis and Crassostrea gigas is the major oyster affected with the martiliosis. And other oysters are also affected with the digestive gland disease. It is mainly affected in the areas of digestive tract. So it is known as digestive gland disease and is the etiological agent of Aber disease. So martiliosis is also known as Aber disease and also known as digestive gland disease. Then, what are the clinical signs? The major clinical signs of martiliosis are the pale digestive gland, then thin watery flesh, then mandible retraction and reduced growth rate. Then inhibition of gonad development, then lesion occur in the digestive gland and yellow discoloration of the digestive gland. These are the major symptoms or clinical signs shown in martiliosis. And there is no known treatment, same as bonamiosis. There is no known treatment for martiliosis also. We can only prevent the disease, only prevent the entry of the pathogen to the cultured area. Then the effective measure is to prevent the introduction of the disease, and the restocking with the resistant species is or the prophylaxis or controlling measure of martiliosis. Then next disease, another parasitic protozoan disease of oyster is microcytosis. Microcytosis or microcell disease. Other major protozoan disease occurred in oyster, it is microcytosis. Microcytos macuni is the parasitic protozoan causing the microcystosis in oyster. It is affected in Crassostrea gigas. It is the major host for the microcystosis, Crassostria gigas, and other oysters also affected with the microcystosis maculae. It is affected in the vascular connective tissue cells, pulse, digestive gland, and mantle. So it is known as the microcell disease. Then abscess formation and tissue necrosis in mantle. The abscess formation that due to the defense mechanism, that shown the defense mechanism of oyster. The particular area, the protozoan affected area will bulged appearance or a hole-like structure we can see. The tissue necrosis in the mantle. The dead tissues in the mantle area. Then induce yellow greenish pustules, a ball-like structure or boil-like structure with yellow greenish color we can appear or we can see in the mantle areas of Crassostria gigas. Then other symptoms are ulcer, mainly on the mantle area with corresponding brown scar of the shell. Other symptoms are the brown scar and the ulceration in the mantle area. Then lesion occur in the connective tissue of pulp, mantle, and vascular tissues. Lesions occur in the connective tissues of pulp, mantle, and vascular tissue. There is same as the bonomyosis and macrocystosis. There is no known treatment for microcytosis. There is no known treatment. There is only a prophylaxis measure. That prophylaxis measure maintain good water quality, avoid the disease affected area, then make a good condition for culture of oyster and make a good environment for breeding of oyster. That are the major preventive measure, and the restocking or reduce the stocking density. Okay, these are the major prophylaxis measure or controlling measure we are taken against for the protozoan parasitic disease in oyster. Bonomyosis, microcystosis, and martiliosis are the major parasitic protozoan disease you can see in the oyster. Thank you.